So I was traveling recently for work, aka play, and I needed to take my kit bag with me, my toy bag, all my implements, which is about half of my collection. It's all my favorites. It's in its own toy bag and it goes in checked luggage because, as I was told by a TSA officer once, this is a tool of over 8 inches of length. Madam, this cannot be a carry-on bag. And I was like, fine. I don't know what you're talking about. I suppose it could be a blunt force object. So I check my toys every time I go to the airport. I have done this dozens and dozens of times. Literally nothing has ever gone wrong. I have always gotten my bag back, all of my implements intact. And yet I still feel a bit of terror every single time that I do, mostly that something's gonna happen to my precious collection. So it got me thinking, if I was starting a new collection, if I lost my implements, if I needed to buy new things immediately, or if I could only take a certain number of implements when I needed to travel for sessions, what would I take? What would the first 10 things I bought be? How could you make a kit bag with only 10 implements? So, in order to combat my perfectionist streak that is currently slowing down my video production, we are doing an unscripted video where I am going to talk through just that, my top 10 implements to make yourself a new kit bag. Think of this as homeroom or a bit of show and tell. Hopefully it will be helpful for those of you looking to start a new toy collection, just getting into things, or looking to expand your current horizons. I'm Princess Kelley, and this is Spanking University. I would just like to go ahead and apologize right now to my editor. This is going to be a challenge. But we're gonna go more vlog style here, classic YouTube, and we'll see how it goes. So, quick ground rules. I am not including belts because I am saying that you can wear your belt onto the plane. It shouldn't be with your kit bag if you're getting a good one and you're wearing it to loosen it. And so it is not in these top 10, but obviously I would include a belt. And you can see all about how to find the perfect spanking belt in a video that will be linked probably here, but maybe there. So this is just non-belt implements. Also, I would like to say that this is not what I would consider to be the best beginner kit bag. AKA there's gonna be a cane on this list, and I'm not saying everyone should go buy a cane. And it's also not necessarily the best kit setup for everybody because everybody's got their own play styles. But I think this is the most well-rounded kit bag that I could come up with. Basically, if I could only take 10 implements to go do my job, which is to play with literally every single type of person, with every single type of spanking desire, every single type of tolerance, how could I do that job in the fewest number of implements? And I just went ahead and limited myself to 10 for the sake of numbers. So let's start with the implement that the vast majority of you guys wanted me to do a full video on after my belts video, and I still might do a full video on, which is hairbrushes. Hairbrushes are the most favored implement, I would say, by most spankos in the emotional sense. A lot of people say that they love to hate hairbrushes. It is aesthetically and emotionally just the right amount of domestic and disciplinary. It's such a good sweet spot. But in reality, brushes hurt a lot. There are versions of hairbrushes that hurt less than others, but for the most part, hairbrushes are pretty mean. Hairbrushes are also pretty abundant, so you can find them everywhere. And I tend to find that spankos, when they're first starting an implement collection, myself included, tend to just buy any hairbrush or spoon or spatula or pervertible in general that even could conceivably work for spanking. You see one at a Target, you buy it. You go to CVS, you buy it. Try to avoid that temptation. You don't need every single one of them, and you'd be better off in many cases saving that money and investing it towards a proper piece. But that said, I would include one pervertible hairbrush in my top 10. So my top 10 implements includes 2 different hairbrushes. Let's start with the pervertible one. I have a few of these. I've just picked my favorite. It's one I've had a long time. This is a CVS pharmacy hairbrush. It is not actually made of wood. You can kind of tell when you tap on it. It is hollow, but it looks like wood, and so it fits the aesthetic aesthetic. It fits the emotions of a wooden hairbrush. And this one also is pretty sturdy as a result. A lot of times you'll see bamboo hairbrushes and bamboo spoons, and I've seen a lot of people tend towards those lately because they're wood. Obviously, they're actual wooden brushes and wooden spoons, but bamboo splits really easily. It cracks and breaks very easily, and when an implement cracks and breaks, if you don't realize it right away, it can lead to a lot of problems. I do have a bamboo implement here, and it is cracked, which is why I don't use it anymore. Just because something's wood doesn't mean it's the right way to go. Anyway, so pervertible brushes, I would say, are a great idea for your lightweight brush. So you don't want just one of those plastic kind of pink hairbrushes, like a wet brush or something like that. You can spank someone with them, but it's not really gonna give you that feeling that you're looking for. So this is a really good option. It is quite stingy, it's light, and it still packs quite a punch, but you can't do a ton of damage with it. So I would say a lightweight pharmacy hairbrush is a really good option for a first item in a kit bag, especially if you're playing with somebody who doesn't have as high of a tolerance. Another example, by the way, of that sort of hairbrush would be something like this, which I know I've seen a lot of people have. This actually is a really mean hairbrush. It is deceptively mean because it's so shiny. Remember when we talked about shininess in belts? So shininess in brushes or things not made of wood also applies. So plasticky, rubbery, stuff like that. It's gonna grip on your skin, which is gonna make it sting a lot. So this, while being on the pervertible and light side, is actually pretty mean, but it'd be kind of hard to hurt someone with this. So that's kind of what I'm going for. So one pervertible lightweight hairbrush, ideally that looks like wood. Number 2 on the hairbrush front is a proper wooden hairbrush. This is an antique ebony hairbrush that I got from a member of our community who does vintage sales. It is absolutely stunning and very, very mean. It's heavy and it packs a punch. It's smooth. So you might be able to see where there are small holes in this brush. I've actually filled those with putty, but this was an antique brush that had one of those silver plates on them, which you'll see a lot of times. If you find one of those brushes or get a brush like that, you take the plate off, sand out where it was, and if you can fill those little holes, that is still a perfectly good brush, but you don't want to use it when it still has the silver bit on it. This actually isn't my favorite of my vintage proper wood brushes. This one is my favorite because it has a longer handle. So anything with a sort of smaller or longer handle is going to be easier for someone with small hands. So women often like these longer, smaller handles. Also, by it being longer, it gives me a bit more leverage. I find topping with hairbrush is actually kind of hard when you start having to choke up really far. Like there's not a lot of leverage here. So I always end up holding my brushes quite low, and that's a lot easier when it's got a long handle. So this is actually a hat brush. It is not a hairbrush. It is a vintage by appointment to Her Majesty the Queen. I got this, I think, at a vintage sale or a flea market. These sorts of brushes are hard to source. They are going to be from eBay, antique stores, vintage markets, flea markets, but Spankos do sometimes source these and sell them at events or on their websites, on Etsy shops, things like that. So those are a great place to find a brush like this. And I would say doing the research, saving up the money and investing in one brush like this rather than buying 10 brushes like this is gonna do you a world of good. You're gonna have a way more diverse ability with your play style. While there are variations in pharmacy brushes and what you can get out of them, there's always a limit to them because they're not proper heavy wood. To recap, we've got one pharmacy brush, one vintage brush. And I would say that's all you need in terms of hairbrushes. I have about 9 just floating around this house, but I think starting out with 2 good ones is the way to go. Next on the brush category / pervertibles category is a bath brush. So why have I included bath brushes? I think a bath brush is worth getting in a well-rounded toolkit because it has a lot of range. I know that sounds crazy because bath brushes are considered the most fearsome implement by many, and with good reason. Bath brushes in many ways are the heaviest implement. I would often say that this is the meanest thing in my toy bag, but it is really just that it has the potential for that sort of impact. And as a result, they're nice to have around if you play with somebody somebody who has a really high tolerance and you need to crank it up a notch. They're fun to have around as a threat. They're fun to have around for bath scenes, but you don't have to play really heavily with them. You can always choke up on it, make it more like a hairbrush. You can go lightly even from the end. There's no reason that a bath brush has to be incredibly mean. They're very versatile and definitely worth a get. They're also relatively easy to find. There's a Walmart one that's very famous that's a perfectly round head. This one is the Eco Tools one, was floating around for a while. So this one is bamboo. And what I was mentioning earlier with bamboo is that it will split. So you can see this one has split. So this is actually just a decorative piece in my home at the moment. I don't play with it. I have a replacement that I prefer way more. I love this bath brush. For anyone living in the UK, it is sold at Boots. It is £10 and it is the best £10 I think I've ever spent. It is solid wood. It packs an absolute punch. I have not been able to break it despite some pretty solid efforts, and I could not love it more, but it is not the traditional length. So I wanted to show the traditional length. I think either is a fine go, but do remember that these bamboo ones will eventually split. I did play with this one for a number of years, but then in doing a hard scene, it did crack, and you do have to be very careful to notice when it cracks, because if I were to hit someone with this again, that crack would almost certainly cut someone. Also, just avoid plastic bath brushes, like those hot pink ones that you can get at IKEA for like $1. I've got one. I bought it. Of course I did. I think it's easy to say with implements a lot of times with pervertibles, oh, it's $1, like I'll just buy it. And sure, it can be fun and a novel thing to like use once, but then you just have it and then it's just taking up space. And as someone who has an entire guest room basically dedicated to play and storing my implements, I would say, don't get into that habit. Buy the good stuff, which would actually be that one. But you can get a good implement bath brush as a pervertible more easily than you can get just about anything. So number 3 on my list is a good wooden bath brush. All right, we're moving right along. So we are still in the pervertibles category, and we are now to my favorite, which is spoons. So I think having a very good wooden spoon is key in a collection. This wooden spoon is my partner's. He doesn't know where he got it. He doesn't know where he got any of his implements, and it's very frustrating. I suspect that this is either vintage, like not very vintage, but from like the 90s or the 80s or something, or it's handmade, because it is a solid hunk of wood and it is absolutely spectacular. It is the best spanking spoon I have ever seen, but I'm not gonna show you this one for too long because you basically can't, I have no idea how to tell you to get it. So we're gonna do my other one. So this is my other spanking spoon. As you can see, it's mine, Princess Kelley's. This is the implement that I've owned the longest. I remember getting it my senior year of college, and my best friend wrote my name on it because I didn't want to lose it amongst my play partner at the time's very large collection. So we wanted to make sure this one was mine. It is from Bed Bath & Beyond, and it is awesome. What makes this spoon better than other spoons that I've had in my collection is basically just how sturdy it is and how tight the wood grain is. So it's not a bamboo spoon, so it's not going to split as easily. And then the other key thing in order to make your spoons last is to not cook with them. So I have a bunch of wooden spoons that I have purchased for spanking that have ended up as cooking spoons, and I have cooking spoons that end up as spanking spoons. They switch around, and I do the horrible thing of washing my wooden spoons in a dishwasher. I know everyone who likes wood right now is gasping in horror. That will dehydrate your wood, wear it out, and it will split. So as a result, I kind of tend to keep them separate. So this one has never been cooked with, probably because it also has Sharpie on it. And as a result, it does not break. It is very solid and very sturdy and excellent to use. So key things you want to look for when you're looking for a spoon. I'm going to do a whole video on this at some point, I promise, of the do's and don'ts of pervertibles, mostly just the don'ts though. So things you want to avoid with pervertibles, and I'm mentioning this in spoons because I see it the most with spoons. Holes, slits, metal, sharp edges. No, absolutely no. Avoid at all costs. You see those spoons with this, like a slotted spoon? A slotted wooden spoon is a recipe for disaster. Do not use it for spanking. It's great for cooking. Get one for cooking. Do not use it for spanking. This is gonna be a very brief primer on slits and holes in wood and why people tell you to get things that are beveled or sanded. When you have a hole in an implement and you make hard contact, the skin and flesh literally gets pushed up into that hole, into that surface, but it's a very quick motion and you very quickly move the implement or pull it away. And if that hole that your flesh is now slightly indented into has sharp edges, when you move it or pull it away, you run a pretty high risk of cutting the skin. That is why people make a big deal about having your holes beveled. That is why people make a big deal about having not sharp edges. And I would encourage you to not buy slotted wooden spoons. They also just aren't necessary. A wooden spoon is such a small surface area. You don't need to be putting holes in it or making it smaller. The great thing about a spoon is it is a tight, concentrated area of pain and area of interest with a spanking. And it doesn't need to be any smaller or any more different than that. It being a curved edge is actually not an issue usually, but I would always use the convex side of it. So the curved outward. So not this bit, but this bit. Not this bit, but this bit. When you're curving in, you've kind of, again, almost made a hole. You're really just gonna be making contact on that edge. And while this is a really smooth edge, so I definitely could get away with it because it's been sanded properly and it's glorious, it's not really the pain you're going for. This one is a spatula, so again, you can hit with this side, but this is getting a little sharp on the edges. This is very sharp actually on the top edge. I would definitely need to sand this down if I wanted to play like that. I know a lot of people like the idea of playing like this, like the idea that it cups the bottom. Flesh moves. When you hit it, it cups the implement. This is not a thing. Butts are not this shape. Butts are not the shapes of spoons. Hit on the outside. And get yourself a good spoon. Your ideal should be to get a proper wooden spoon. So that was number 4 on the list. I'm gonna point out now that that is technically the last of my pervertibles. Remember, belts aren't included, and I'm gonna say that my saddle straps, while technically pervertibles, aren't in the same way. Now, to round out my wooden section, we come to paddles. So I am very much hashtag team leather, but I do love a good paddle. Part of it is that I am an absolute sucker for wood grain. I love fancy woods. I love looking at exotic woods. I love going through the exotic woods when they're at vendor fair and just kind of touching them. I love the feeling of them. I love the look of them. I love everything about them, but then I don't always play with them. Kind of the truth of the matter. So I have picked the 2 types of paddles that I do play with on a regular basis as both top and bottom, and that I would say would be pretty critical for me if I was rebuying a kit, and I think are a good call for anybody. So the first is a traditional school style paddle. So I've picked this one because it is the most user-friendly frat paddle that I have ever had, and I could not more highly recommend it. It is by Wood Paddles, a guy named Chad. I will link all of the implements that I'm showing down below. So this is one of his paddles. It's very simple, if I'm being honest. It is not the most aesthetically pleasing by any means of the paddles that I have, but it is functionally so good. Part of the reason frat paddles are really hard and people don't use them is because they're often really heavy. They're intimidating as a top and a bottom. And you can do some genuine serious damage with a frat paddle. Remember, that was the reason my toy bag was not allowed to get on an airplane. Because I suppose it functions much like a cricket bat and therefore could be a weapon, right? This, not really. It's very light, but it is very stiff. It is hardwood. It is not breaking. It's not going anywhere, but it is light enough that I feel very confident wielding it. I also get the added benefit of the, I don't call it fear factor, but there's something to getting to haul off and swing with a paddle. Whereas my really heavy paddles, if I go like, you'll feel like you've gotten hit into the next county. And while that's great, it's not aesthetically as pleasing. So this sort of paddle is wonderful for that. I love the feel of it as a bottom because it's got quite a bit of thud because it is a frat paddle, but it's got a lot of sting because it's not so heavy. This over jeans is just the best. It is so good. Love, 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 love. And I don't love the handle, if I'm being honest. It's a little big for my hands, but it is my favorite of all of the school style paddles that I have and I've ever seen, and I would highly recommend it. I'm sure there are plenty of other makers who have made similar things. Basically, it's just not too thick. It's not super heavy. I don't think it's a hardwood. I think it's a laminate of different woods, which you can see on the side. And it's just great. It's very versatile. And again, I'm picking 10 implements here that would be universally useful. So it might only be that 1 out of every 10 people I play with has any desire to play with a frat paddle, but there are people who that is their main interest. American style school paddlings, Southern style paddlings are really popular. And so having an implement in your collection that you can use in those circumstances is a good idea, even if you're not going to use it a ton of other times. But I do think that these can also be really useful for sensation-based play or physical-based spanking play, where you're kind of going for more of the feeling, because it is going to be completely different to how hairbrushes, spoons, belts, all of those feel. This will feel different than everything else in your bag. So I feel like having one of these is a really good option. The other really good version of that I would recommend, if you can find one, is a proper vintage one. So this is a sorority paddle from 1948 from the University of Illinois. It's glorious. It's pretty heavy. It's not really well balanced. It's kind of hard to use, but it does the trick and works wonderfully. And for those of you who might be collector types like me, these are not the hardest to find, and they are generally good implements. Like, they're not like the new frat paddles that are made of plywood. A lot heavier than this guy and quite a bit bigger. So I have a series of this style of paddle. This is my lightest, this is my medium, and then I've got a big boy, Miss Rose one, that is gorgeous, but a bit of a bully. All right, so last in our wood category, and the last of the paddles, is an OTK paddle. I have a lot of OTK paddles. I have so many beautiful, incredibly well-made paddles by artisans, genius makers, and I love each and every one of them for their own reason. They have a diversity of feel about them. They have a diversity of appearance. They're great, and I will continue to buy them. And at some point I will do a full bag tour and you guys will get to see all of my implements. But if I'm being honest, I don't use them that much because I tend towards hairbrushes, because if you're thinking emotionally and headspace-wise about a paddle, you're probably thinking about a frat style or school style paddle. So OTK spanking paddles are very specific for people who enjoy spanking play for itself. You like the feeling of spanking, you like the technical elements, you like learning how the different woods feel, different types and different times, how you can make the sensations go, where you can push yourself, where you can pull back. If you enjoy that element of spanking, just spanking as a concept, as a physical experience, OTK paddles are great. They're also good for people in domestic discipline relationships. I know a lot of people do punishment paddles. I have historically had a punishment paddle. This sort of kind of is my punishment paddle. But again, if I'm limiting myself to 10 implements, I only have one in my bag. And I picked this one because it is my favorite by a country mile. If I could only save 5 implements in my collection, without a doubt, this specific spoon makes it. Honestly, if I could only save 2, it's this in my strap. Like, emotionally, this is a very important implement for me. It is a Miss Rose paddle. It is made of tulip wood. It is pink. I have a small collection of tulip wood things from her at this juncture that she's been making me. I'll give you the brief backstory of this paddle, which is that the year I took over TASP, I had been dating this boy and I quite liked him, and he'd broken up with me just before TASP. Rude. And we were still talking though, and still kind of playing. And I'd seen this paddle on Miss Rose's pre-sale for TASP, and I'd fallen in love. And I thought, I'll get it for him. I don't know, as some sort of like woo gift. And I mentioned this to Miss Rose, and she refused to sell it to me if I was going to give it to him. She said that there had never been an implement more well suited to me. It's a spoon, which is my favorite style. It fits my hand perfectly, and it is pink, and it is perfect. And she said that she would hold it for me, but she would not sell it to me if I didn't promise to keep it. And so I promised to keep it, and it has, for the last 9 years, been my favorite implement. I love the way it feels as a bottom. I love using it as a top. It has never broken, never cracked. I've not taken as good a care of it as I should have, but I love it tremendously. This is my wooden paddle of choice, but there are plenty of amazing paddle makers who make amazing OTK paddles. If you're going to do an OTK paddle, if you want to get one, invest in one that's nice. Invest in one with good edges and a good weight and a wood that you like. Read up about the different weights of woods, how they feel in different occasions. Find one that you like. If you know that you're somebody who plays with lots of partners, it might be worth getting one that is varnished or sealed. Miss Rose ones are not, they are oiled, which just makes them a little bit harder to clean. So I have a set of sealed ones that I use when I know I'm playing with lots of people, and then I have my oiled ones that I use mostly for me early on in a play. So yes, OTK paddle, worth investing in, but think about when and how you're going to use it when you play with it. Okay, so we've made it through pervertibles and we've made it through wood. Now let's talk about leather and canes, AKA my favorite bit. I won't go into too much detail on this one because if you saw the video I was in on Jillian's channel, then you have heard me talk about this implement plenty. It is the London Tanner's Domestic Discipline Strap. It is the greatest. It is my favorite singular implement. It is mean. It is a medium to heavy intensity strap. I would not let this be your only strap, but it is a dream. If you're gonna invest in a strap, there is not a single strap that I could recommend more highly to put your investment towards, but there are less expensive straps that are also incredibly useful. Specifically, I love this one. I swear this video isn't sponsored by Chad Straps or Chad Paddles, but I do kind of really like his stuff at the moment. Again, it's not the prettiest. I still hate this handle. It needs to be smaller. It is not well suited to a woman's hand, but this strap is absolute genius. It is a very wide, very soft leather that is doubled over. This is nice, this is thuddy, this is hard to mess up. This is the most beginner-friendly strap that I have ever seen. There is a version of this that is singled also, not doubled over, which is also great. They're short, so they're hard to mess up, harder to mess up. Basically, what I'm recommending is a lighter weight strap and a heavier weight strap. You'd want one of each if you were just starting a collection. So I really like this sort of soft, really wide tack style leather that has been properly sanded on the edges, so it is properly smooth. There are great manufacturers out there that make these style, and I would recommend one. All right, so then we're on to number 9, and it is a cane. I could not do things without a cane. I would not want to exist without a cane. I would not want to have a kit bag that did not have a cane in it, though they are the most annoying thing in your kit bag. I picked this one specifically because it's short. This is the cane that travels with me when I do not need my full kit bag, but I still need a cane. It's actually quite a stiff cane, which makes it a bit easier to use. Get a cane. I would recommend getting one from a proper cane manufacturer. Canes for Pain, I know, do good ones. Quality Control in the UK do good ones. There's plenty of good cane manufacturers and cane specialists. Get yourself one. Stiffer, less whippy is easier when you are just learning. The really light, really whippy ones actually hurt in some ways way more than the medium weight, medium thickness ones. So I would go for no narrower than basically 1 centimeter, and I'd probably take the medium bend if I was getting one cane, but a cane. That brings us to our last item, my 10th item. And so I've decided to make this one a bit of what I'm calling the wild card. And it kind of goes into what I would recommend as being the next steps for this kit selection in general, which is kind of my like bonus items. So if I was picking this kit bag and I really needed the 10 things that I would play with most, the biggest diversity of implement, I would actually probably go for a leather paddle. I don't love leather paddles. They are not my recommendation in general, but I think you should have at least one good one that you like. They are yummy. If your hand starts hurting, they're a really nice kind of alternative. Get a nice one though. Those ones from sex shops are terrible. Don't get one with lots of stitching on the edge. This is by Leatherthorn. He is impossible to track down, but his stuff is absolutely gorgeous. If I could only have 10 things, I would have a leather paddle because they are useful for when they are useful and there is nothing else that works like them. But in reality, what I would probably do with my 10th implement is I would either bring a second cane of a different weight and type. I'd bring a third strap, either my really light saddle strap or a really heavy one, my really heavy saddle strap, or I'd bring a Tawse. That actually would be pretty high on my list. Those are kind of the next step implements. Essentially what I'm saying is once you've built out the basics of your kit and you realize what it is that you love, that you're really good at, that brings you the most excitement. For me, that's straps. So I would buy more straps. For Stephen Lewis, that's canes. When I asked him what 10 he would pick, he said at least 3, if not 4, of his 10 would be different types, weights, and thicknesses of canes. But again, what's your next step? Where are you going from there? Think about how you like to play, how your play partners like to play, and be thoughtful when you're building out your kit bag if you're not going to be able to get everything all at once. So anyway, this was a very random video, but I hope that it was interesting and potentially helpful for some of you guys. I will do my best to link every implement that I have shown in this video. I will try to link where I got it down below, but a lot of things are vintage, hand-me-downs, flea markets, vendor fair finds that you can't get your hands hands on, but you will find your own. That is part of the fun. Tell me down below, what are your top 10 implements? And let me know if you are interested in seeing a full kit run, and I will sit on the floor and go through my entire implement collection. So if you enjoyed this video and would like to help support the creation of more of them, you can join our Patreon. I will put the links in the description box below. Patrons get an exclusive live stream once a month, access to our Discord, as well as the ability to request topics for upcoming videos. And mostly you just have my undying gratitude for your support, because this is the only way to make these videos happen. You can also get some of our merch, which is wonderful, on our website, spankinguniversity.com/merch. We have more of that coming out soon. And I hope to be making more of these videos more frequently. I promise to try to stop my perfectionist self from sabotaging getting them out at a more frequent pace. So hopefully this video will have made me feel better about doing unscripted things, and my editor isn't going to yell at me too terribly much about it, and we will get more things out in the future. I hope you enjoyed this video, and subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and like this video, share it with a friend. All of those things really help the channel, and I guess I'll see you next time. Until then, class dismissed.